What if I told you that one of the most powerful men in history was not defeated by an enemy army, but by his own friends? A man who conquered nations, controlled Rome, and changed history forever, yet was stabbed to death in the Senate. This is not just a story of power. This is the story of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was not born powerful. He was not born rich, and he was certainly not born a king. He was born in 100 BC into a noble Roman family that had a famous name, but very little real power. Rome at that time was a dangerous place. Politics was brutal, corruption was everywhere, and survival depended on alliances, lies, and strength. From a young age, Caesar learned one important lesson. In Rome, mercy is weakness, and ambition is survival. When Caesar was only in his early 20s, Rome fell into chaos. A ruthless dictator named Sulla took control of the Republic. Sulla ordered Caesar to divorce his wife because she belonged to a rival political family. Caesar refused. That single decision almost cost him his life. Sulla placed Caesar on a death list. Caesar was forced to flee Rome, hiding from soldiers, constantly moving, knowing that one mistake would mean execution. Years later, Sulla would say something chilling about him. In Caesar, there are many Mariuses, meaning this man will one day destroy Rome. When Sulla died, Caesar returned to Rome, but he returned changed. He was no longer just a politician. He wanted absolute greatness. Caesar understood something most men did not. Rome was tired of weak leaders. Rome wanted heroes, so he chose the most dangerous path possible, military glory. Caesar took command in Gaul, a wild and brutal land filled with fierce tribes. What happened next shocked the world. Against impossible odds, Caesar crushed tribe after tribe. He conquered vast territories, expanded Rome's borders, and became a living legend. His soldiers didn't just follow him, they worshipped him. Caesar fought beside them. He ate with them. He rewarded loyalty and punished betrayal without mercy. Within a few years, Julius Caesar became the most feared and admired general in Rome. But power creates enemies. Back in Rome, the Senate was watching him closely. They were terrified, because Caesar now had something more dangerous than an army. He had the love of the people, and Rome had never forgiven men like that. By the time Julius Caesar returned from Gaul, Rome was no longer the same republic he had left behind. He was now the most successful general in Roman history. His victories had brought Rome unimaginable wealth. His name was spoken with admiration by the people and with fear by the Senate. At the center of this growing tension stood one man, Pompey the Great. Pompey was once Caesar's ally. Together, along with a wealthy politician named Crassus, they had formed an unofficial alliance known as the First Triumvirate. It was a partnership built not on friendship, but on ambition. But alliances in Rome never lasted. Crassus was killed in battle, and without him, the balance of power collapsed. Pompey slowly turned against Caesar. The Roman Senate, terrified of Caesar's popularity, chose Pompey as their champion. They believed Pompey was the only man strong enough to stop Caesar. So they gave him power, extraordinary power. Caesar saw the message clearly. Rome no longer trusted him. Rome feared him. The Senate issued an order. Caesar must give up his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. In Roman law, this was not a request. It was a trap. If Caesar returned without his army, his enemies would destroy him in court. He would be exiled or executed. Caesar stood at a crossroads. Obey Rome and lose everything, or defy Rome and become its enemy. Meanwhile, Pompey gathered forces inside Italy. The Senate declared Caesar a threat to the Republic. His titles were stripped, his honors questioned. For the first time, Caesar understood the truth. There was no place for him in Rome anymore, only domination or destruction. But Caesar did not rush into war blindly. He waited. He calculated. He watched Rome weaken itself through fear and indecision. His soldiers remained loyal. They had fought with him for years. They trusted him more than the Senate ever could. Caesar spoke to his men not as a ruler, but as one of them. He reminded them of the battles they had survived together, the lands they had conquered, the rewards Rome now wanted to deny them, and the soldiers agreed. They would follow Caesar anywhere. Pompey, on the other hand, had political authority, but weaker loyalty. His power came from laws. Caesar's power came from hearts. Rome was drifting toward something it had avoided for centuries. Civil war. 2 men, 1 republic, and no peaceful future left between them. Caesar knew that once the first move was made, there would be no return. Rome would either belong to him, or he would die trying to claim it. The moment that changed Roman history forever did not happen in Rome. It happened on a cold, quiet night, on the edge of a small river called the Rubicon. For most Romans, the Rubicon was meaningless. For Julius Caesar, it was everything. By Roman law, no general was allowed to bring an army into Italy. Crossing that river with soldiers was considered an act of treason. Caesar knew this. He stood on the riverbank, surrounded by his most loyal men. Behind him was Gaul, victory, power, and honor. Ahead of him was Rome, fear, enemies, and certain war. If he crossed the Rubicon, there would be no forgiveness, no negotiation, no turning back. History says Caesar paused, not because he was afraid, but because he understood the weight of the moment. Then he spoke words that would echo through centuries. The die is cast. And with that, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon. The Roman Civil War had begun. As Caesar marched south, something unexpected happened. Cities opened their gates to him. Towns surrendered without resistance. Roman citizens welcomed him, not as a traitor, but as a liberator. Pompey and the Senate were shocked. They had expected resistance. They had expected chaos. Instead, Caesar advanced faster than anyone believed possible. Pompey realized too late that he had misjudged his enemy. Caesar was not marching as a rebel. He was marching as Rome's favorite son. Pompey made a critical decision. Rather than defend Rome, he abandoned the city entirely. The Senate fled with him. For the first time in centuries, Rome was left defenseless. Caesar entered the city without bloodshed. No looting, no executions. He declared that he had not come to destroy the Republic, but to save it. But words could not hide the truth. Rome now had only one master. Pompey retreated east, gathering legions in Greece. He still had numbers. He still had resources. What he lacked was confidence. Caesar followed relentlessly. The civil war spread across the Roman world, Italy, Spain, Greece, and beyond. This was no longer a political struggle. It was a fight for absolute control. 2 generals, 2 visions of Rome, and only one could survive. Caesar knew the decisive battle was coming, and when it came, it would decide the fate of the Roman Republic forever. Pompey believed time was on his side. He had more legions, more senators, more resources from the eastern provinces. Caesar had speed and loyalty, but Pompey had numbers. Both men knew the war could not last forever. It would be decided in one great battle. Pompey chose Greece as the battlefield, near the city of Pharsalus. There, in 48 BCE, the 2 greatest armies Rome had ever assembled faced each other. Pompey commanded nearly twice as many soldiers as Caesar. The Senate was confident. They believed Caesar would finally be crushed. Caesar, however, understood something Pompey did not. Wars are not won by numbers alone. They are won by discipline, leadership, and belief. Before the battle, Caesar addressed his soldiers. He did not promise wealth. He did not promise safety. He reminded them of their shared victories, their loyalty, and their honor. These men had marched with him for years. They trusted him completely. Pompey's army, on the other hand, was divided. Many soldiers respected Caesar. Some did not even want to fight him. When the battle began, Pompey followed a cautious strategy. He ordered his troops to hold position, believing Caesar's men would exhaust themselves. Caesar immediately saw the mistake. He adapted. At the perfect moment, he unleashed a hidden reserve of elite soldiers, trained, specifically to counter Pompey's powerful cavalry. The move was devastating. Pompey's cavalry collapsed. Panic spread through his ranks. What had seemed like a certain victory turned into chaos. Caesar pressed forward without mercy. The battlefield became a massacre. By the end of the day, Pompey's army was destroyed. The Senate's last hope was gone. Pompey fled the battlefield, no longer a general, only a hunted man. The Roman Republic had lost its champion. Caesar had won the greatest victory of his life, but the war was not yet over. Pompey was still alive, and as long as he lived, Caesar's power was not absolute. After his defeat at Pharsalus, Pompey fled for his life. The man who once ruled Rome now traveled as a refugee. He believed Egypt would offer him safety. Pompey had once helped place the young Egyptian king, Ptolemy III, on the throne. He expected gratitude. He expected protection. Instead, he walked into a trap. Egypt was already unstable. Ptolemy the Fiend was locked in a bitter struggle for power with his sister Cleopatra. The Egyptian court was divided, fearful, and desperate to please whoever seemed strongest. When news arrived that Caesar was approaching Egypt, Ptolemy's advisors panicked. They believed killing Pompey would win Caesar's favor. It was a fatal miscalculation. As Pompey stepped ashore near Pelusium, he was betrayed. Former allies turned against him. He was stabbed and murdered, alone, far from Rome. His head was cut off and preserved. When Caesar arrived in Egypt, he was presented with Pompey's severed head as a gift. Instead of celebrating, Caesar was horrified. Pompey had been his enemy, but he had also been a Roman, a former ally and the husband of Caesar's own daughter. Caesar reportedly turned away in grief. He ordered Pompey's remains to be honored properly. The men responsible for the murder were punished. Pompey's death did not bring Caesar peace. It pulled him deeper into Egypt's dangerous politics. The power struggle between Ptolemy III and Cleopatra now became Caesar's problem, and Cleopatra was about to make a move that would change history forever. After Pompey's death, Caesar remained in Egypt. He claimed he was there to restore order. In reality, Egypt had become the final battlefield of Rome's civil war. At the center of the chaos were two siblings, Cleopatra VII and Ptolemy III. They were co-rulers by name, enemies by reality. Cleopatra had been forced into exile. Ptolemy controlled the army, the palace, and the throne. Cleopatra understood one truth very clearly. If she wanted power, she needed Caesar, but she could not approach him openly. Ptolemy's guards watched every move. So Cleopatra took a risk that would become legendary. One night she had herself secretly brought into Caesar's chambers, hidden inside a wrapped bundle of cloth. When the bundle was unrolled, Cleopatra emerged, calm, confident, and fearless. Caesar was stunned, not just by her beauty, but by her intelligence, ambition, and presence. Cleopatra spoke as a queen, not a refugee. She argued her claim to the throne with logic and courage. She offered Caesar something valuable: stability, wealth, and loyalty. Caesar listened, and he chose her side. This decision instantly made Caesar an enemy of Ptolemy XIII. Fighting erupted in Alexandria. The city burned. Roman soldiers clashed with Egyptian forces in the streets. Caesar found himself trapped in a foreign land, surrounded by enemies with only a small army at his side. Yet he did not retreat. He held the palace. He protected Cleopatra. And he prepared for war, because Caesar had never walked away from a fight. Caesar's situation in Egypt became extremely dangerous. He was trapped inside Alexandria with limited troops, hostile crowds, and an enemy king controlling the land. Ptolemy XIII's forces surrounded the city. Supply lines were cut. The Roman army was outnumbered, but Caesar stayed calm. He ordered his men to secure the palace and nearby ports. The fighting spread through Alexandria's narrow streets. Buildings burned. Chaos ruled the city. During the clashes, part of the great library of Alexandria was destroyed, an unintended loss that history would never forget. Cleopatra remained by Caesar's side. She watched as Rome's greatest general fought not just with swords, but with strategy. Caesar sent urgent messages to Roman allies in the east asking for reinforcements. Meanwhile, Ptolemy tried to turn the people against him. He painted Caesar as a foreign invader, but Caesar used diplomacy as skillfully as warfare. He released Ptolemy's sister, Arsinoe, hoping to divide the enemy leadership. The plan worked, but not perfectly. Arsinoe declared herself queen and led troops against Caesar. Now Caesar faced multiple enemies inside and outside the city. Despite the danger, he refused to abandon Cleopatra. Weeks passed under siege. Food became scarce. Morale was tested. Then finally, Roman reinforcements arrived from Syria. The balance of power shifted. Caesar prepared for a decisive battle that would determine Egypt's future. With Roman reinforcements, Caesar launched a coordinated attack on Ptolemy XIII's forces. The battle was fierce and relentless. Caesar's soldiers, disciplined and loyal, pressed forward despite exhaustion. Ptolemy's army, though large, was divided and poorly coordinated. In the chaos of battle, Ptolemy XIII drowned while attempting to flee across the Nile. Caesar had won. Cleopatra was restored to the throne as the undisputed ruler of Egypt. The young queen now ruled alongside Caesar's protection and guidance. Their alliance was political, but it also became personal. Cleopatra's intelligence, ambition, and charm impressed Caesar deeply. Egypt's wealth, resources, and strategic location strengthened Caesar's power. Rome watched closely. As news of Caesar's victories and the Egyptian alliance spread, he had won a foreign war without losing a single loyal legion. But Caesar also knew one thing: power always attracts enemies. Even in victory, threats remained. The Roman Senate still watched him. Other generals still waited for mistakes, and Cleopatra's influence would become a point of contention in Rome itself. Caesar's path was clear: consolidate power, stabilize Egypt, and prepare for what was. With Egypt stabilized, Caesar prepared to return to Rome. He had secured Cleopatra's position and strengthened his influence over the eastern provinces. Rome, however, remained politically tense. Caesar's rivals, including members of the Senate, feared his growing power. They whispered about ambition, tyranny, and the end of the Republic. Meanwhile, Caesar's victories made him immensely popular with the Roman people. They hailed him as a hero, a savior, a man who brought glory to Rome. Triumphal processions celebrated his campaigns in Gaul, Pompey's defeat, and his success in Egypt. But Caesar did not rest. He knew that to secure his power, he needed to address political, social, and economic challenges in Rome. He reformed the calendar, introduced new laws, and redistributed land to veterans. Every decision increased his influence and also stirred resentment among his enemies. Some senators feared that Caesar's return would mark the final collapse of the Republic. Others hoped to ally with him, sensing his unstoppable momentum. Caesar was aware of both factions. He navigated Rome with careful calculation, charm, and absolute confidence. His allies trusted him. His enemies feared him. And as he stood on the steps of the Senate, he knew that the coming months would decide the ultimate fate of Rome. Julius Caesar had returned to Rome victorious. His power was unmatched, his influence undeniable. But with great power came great danger. Some senators plotted in secret. They whispered in the halls of the Republic, warning of tyranny and ambition gone too far. Caesar knew they were watching. He knew he had enemies who would strike when he least expected it. Yet despite threats and conspiracies, he focused on the reforms and visions he had fought for. Rome's stability, the welfare of its citizens, and the expansion of its glory became his mission. Cleopatra remained in Egypt, their bond both political and personal. Together they had shaped history even from afar. But destiny had its own plan. March 15th, 44 BCE, the infamous Ides of March, would change everything. As Caesar entered the Senate, he was surrounded by those he had trusted, blades hidden in their togas. The betrayal was swift. The strike was final. The great general, the hero of Rome, fell. Caesar's life ended in the very city he had worked tirelessly to save. And yet, history could not erase him. His name would echo through centuries. His victories would inspire armies. His vision would shape empires. Julius Caesar was dead, but his legacy would live forever. History remembers the bold. Don't miss the next story of power, betrayal, and legends. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Your next journey into history awaits.